Welcome to Teacher Tales, where the chalk meets the cheese. I'm Glenn Bryant, your host on this weekly podcast, here to share the fun, the fails, and the fantastic moments from classrooms everywhere. Whether you're an educator or you just love a good story, you're in the right place. Stick around, like, subscribe, and share. You don't want to miss a single laugh or lesson. Welcome to
Teacher Tales.
I'm here today with Brandi Ashby at West Morgan High School. Coach, I taught with her. Lord, it's been 100 years ago. Seems like it has not really been 100 years, but it seemed like I do know that when I was there, she was one of the most innovative and creative teachers that I ever saw practice the art of teaching, and I am delighted that she's with us today. So, Miss Ashby, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into teaching, what transpired that wound us up 20 years later talking about.
Well, teaching was not on my bingo card. My mom was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. My other aunt was in education. My cousin. I have so many memories of being at Thanksgiving tables, and all they talked about was school. So in my life, I did not want to be a teacher. I saw how much my mom had to work after school. She had a 30-minute rule when we got home that we couldn't talk to her for 30 minutes because she had to decompress. And now I understand that a little bit. I need a little bit more, though. I need about an hour to decompress. But, it just was so far from my mind being a teacher. I wanted to help people. I actually wanted to be a mental health counselor. And I think I would have been good at it, but I went, started school, went to Calhoun, got my general ed, played softball there, went to Athens, and started in the mental health field. I got interviewed and offered a job, and I went and shadowed a little bit. And I thought, I don't think I can do this. Like, this would drain me so much. I don't think I could put in 25 years. And so then I was like, I think I want to be a high school counselor. Because that's easy, right? So easy.
They don't do anything.
Yeah. Little did I know.
Sit in their office and check their manicure all
Well,
day.
that's what people think. But good night. We have a fabulous one here. Miss Knowlton's awesome. So I was like, I'm going to do that, and they said, well, you got to teach for 3 years, and I was like, well, just give me whatever I can do the easiest, the quickest. So English it was. Started taking my lit classes, my English classes. I finally got out of school and I did my internship with the full intention of going to be a high school counselor. And I was 24. They put me in a class of seniors. So they were 18. And for a young female, that's a little difficult sometimes. But I loved it. I loved it more than anything. It just felt natural.
It was genetic.
It was. I mean, if it can be. Yeah. And I have been blessed with some really wonderful teachers. I am a little biased, but my mom, Cinda Pruitt, was the best science teacher I had. And as much as I have tried to not be like her, I'm pretty much just a replica of her in the classroom. So I can't. And I remember a lot of times I would have kids come up to me when I was little doing my homework, and they would say, you're so lucky to have a mom like that at home. And I didn't realize that until now, because she was a mom to so many other people. Yes. And being in teaching, you are a mom, you are a counselor, you are, a confidant, you are a teacher, you're so many things. And it's such a big responsibility.
It's the most important job on the planet.
I agree, if you do it right.
Well, even if you do it wrong, it's still important.
Yes, it is important. And I love it. And I'll be honest, when I did my student teaching, my supervising teacher, she was wonderful. Her husband was in an accident, and she was gone a lot of the time caring for him. So it was me for about 60 something days by myself with a substitute. and I just took it, and that was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Well,
Best thing.
you knew what to do. It was genetic.
Yeah, it's always come easy. And I do love it. I'm very animated. I like to tell stories, and I just enjoy being around the kids. I mean, they're therapy too.
And I was always on the other end of the hall. But look, and that we had that real long hall
Yeah, I
in the
miss
old
that
school.
hall.
And I, but I always knew, or the kids would always say what a great teacher you were, and we always knew. And I'm thrilled to death that you joined us today.
Well, thank you for asking me. I was a little nervous. I had to get a little pep talk from some of my previous students. I did go on the face Google last night.
You will do fine.
I think that's it.
Yep.
Well, can I talk about some of my favorite teachers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Some other people who I kind of would like to emulate. Dr. Randy Cross from Calhoun was probably one of my favorite teachers at Calhoun.
Now, what did he do that kind of that made him different?
He didn't look at a book, not once. He had such a wonderful presence, and he wove all these personal stories into what he was teaching. He did not give me an inch. He held high expectations. He was hard. It was the only C I've ever made, and I worked hard for that C, and I'm not ashamed of that C, but he pushed you, and he did not allow you to. He always would say, you can do better than that. And he just had a way. You could sit there and just listen to him all day. He was very intelligent and funny, and just a lot of personality. And when I went to Athens, there were two that I really loved. One of them was Miss Janita Smith, and she's no longer with us, but I could just sit for hours and listen to her talk about literature, and it was just like it was in her blood, and she just was so like theatrical and just made everything. I would quit taking notes. It was just like storytelling. And then I had a Dr. Elmore. He was at Athens as well. I like to equate him to the Nutty Professor. I went up into his office one day, and he was playing Scrabble by himself. Which I didn't know. How could you win or lose if you're playing?
You're almost guaranteed to win.
But one thing that he did, he wrote a book on The Great Gatsby, and they've written two books. And I remember to this day, I wrote a paper about what I thought the color green symbolized, and he disagreed with me. And he wanted to talk to me, and so we talked about it. And he said, I don't think it, I think you need to look at it again and just see. And I was like, okay. So I went home and I looked at my paper, and I was like, I feel like I really did my research. Like, I feel like I really backed it up. And so I went back and I turned it in, and I had a little note on it, and I said, I respect you so much, because I do. I respected him so much. And I said, I know that you're an expert in Gatsby. I said, but I just really feel like if you'll just read it, like you'll get it. And I got 100.
I'll be dog.
I did. I got 100. And he said, I'm glad that you stuck with it.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I tell my kids. I say, you don't have to think what I think. You just have to prove to me why you think what you think.
I really struggled in college literature because my teachers did not take that philosophy.
Oh.
A little red wheelbarrow was just a little red wheelbarrow to me. Still, it's a little red wheelbarrow to me with rain on it, and I don't know that I'll ever get anything more. I don't know that I'll ever equate the little red wheelbarrow to the Industrial Revolution.
Oh no, why not?
I just don't. It's a red wheelbarrow.
It's easy. Come on. No.
Any others?
I hate to leave people out.
What about some of those? There were several, like Mary Marquardt.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of those others that were at West Morgan when because I was still a young teacher when we I guess we started out not that much. I had a couple of years at East Lawrence, but I feel like I was still a young teacher when I was here. And there were some, that just were really, Donna Jarmigan, for example.
Oh, man, she was fabulous.
Just a great
fabulous.
Teachers.
Miss Marquardt was my mentor. And she was, she was real hard-nosed. Like, she was very disciplinarian. And I did not mind that. Like I really, I was drawn to her just because she had ideas that weren't like other people. And, she never tried to sway me from what I believe, but we would have like these really deep talks and we just got along really well. We still talk some to this day. But she did teach me a lot. I remember my first day of school, Coach Coggins wanted to know who parked in his spot.
Wait, which Coach Coggins?
Pierre.
Okay.
Pierre. He was like, who's parked in my spot? And I was like, and he was explaining it, and I was like, I think it was me. And I was like 20, 24, 25. And he was like, oh, honey, it's okay. Never mind. But that's my first introduction to Pierre.
Yeah, there's a parking spot story I could tell, but that's for another day.
I don't know if we could do that. Mr. Adams was also somebody, he came in after me actually. And, we just clicked. Like we have the same type personality. We both love Poe and Gothic literature, and he always pushed me. He intimidated me a lot. He was younger than me, but so well read, and he just knew everything about literature. And I have imposter syndrome. I think our whole pod has it. We always talking about having imposter syndrome and not thinking that we're good enough, but we are.
Well,
we struggle with that.
I've always figured you don't have to be the best; you just have to not be the worst.
Yes, that's a good philosophy. Maybe I need to take that.
So
take that up.
As an administrator, I wanted our school to do as well as we could.
Yeah.
I just didn't want us to be last.
Yeah. It's a competition here.
Yeah. Well,
we're very competitive.
At our place. It was beat East all the at Ardmore it's beat East about everything. And first couple of years it was a struggle. Everything academic, it was a kind of a no-brainer. We would always do it, but athletically, we would never.
Yeah.
They had a couple of hundred kids more than we did to pick from. So.
Yeah,
that makes a difference.
Every school's different.
At the end of the day, the last 3 years I was there, it was beat East in everything.
Yeah,
and I liked it.
Competition is good for you.
And we're back, and we're ready to do our long form interview. Different questions this week, but I think that nonetheless you'll get some great answers. So one of the questions that we had in common, questions that I asked that you responded to, how do you stay motivated on those days when nothing seems to go right?
Lots of coffee. I have a little coffee fridge just for that. I will say this. I'm very fortunate to be at West Morgan. We have a very, very strong support system here. Very close to my pod. We have a very, very close relationship with all the teachers here. And, we understand each other. We understand when we're having bad days, and we understand, when it's time for you to be the person that needs the support. So, my friends and lots of coffee for sure.
And not a lot of turnover at West Morgan.
Oh no.
And in the core teaching group, and that camaraderie, can't be duplicated.
Yes, it's unlike anywhere else. It really is.
What's your favorite teaching or your favorite moment? What is one of your most favorite teaching moments? What is one of your most favorite teaching moments?
So this one really got me. It took 20 years to have my most memorable moment, but I was working for National Board, trying to get National Board. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life.
It's a big deal.
It is. It really is it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I was recording a group of kids, and Miss Holiday was with me. She was recording, and we were doing a fishbowl. And the topic was, when is it okay to quit? When is it okay to say enough is enough? And it was more focused on sports, but it could be for anything. When is it okay to quit for your mental health? So we talked a lot about mental health, a lot of prep work. And I've done this fishbowl numerous times, but this one group of kids, they're seniors now. They just were raw, like they let me in, they let other kids in. We had kids from different backgrounds, different cultures, different walks of life, different situations, and they were all talking about the pressures that they feel. And I had kids getting up and putting their hands on each other. I had kids crying. I was crying. Miss Holiday was crying. Everybody was crying. And it was just the most natural lesson that you could not duplicate it. You cannot duplicate it. And it's always one of my favorite lessons to do, but just that group of kids just really opened up. And they talked about their parents. They talked about their peer groups. They talked about so many things.
Because kids are dealing with so much.
Oh my gosh.
That we as teachers, we don't ever really know what. I mean, we just don't know. We see them. We see and they can be fake. Because most of the time they can be, they only have to be fake 50 minutes at a time, and so they're able to.
It took one kid. It took one kid to just bust it open. Like it was a boy. He just said what other people were feeling, and when he started the conversation, other people were just like, I know how you feel. And it was just the best thing. And I got national board, and I really think
that it was because of
I think that lesson and those kids, they did it. That was it.
My favorite question that I ever ask anybody is, if you could give your younger teacher self one piece of advice, what would it be? And why do you cling to that piece of advice as being the go-to piece of advice?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember exactly what I put, but thinking of it right now, I don't take things so seriously. Don't take my work home and let it encroach on my family.
You gotta have boundaries.
You gotta have boundaries. And I honestly, I struggled setting boundaries to begin with. It's okay to say no. It's okay to not answer an email, at 10 o'clock at night, or when a parent is very upset and is really on you. It's okay to not take it personally. So I feel like I give myself a lot more grace now, being older, and knowing that everything's just not, gotta do.
Yeah, I always on the email thing. I always would when I would almost always respond to an email with a phone call, and I would read their phone call back to them. I mean, their email back to them on the phone. And I said, and many times they'd say, "Well, man, that sounds harsh." And I said, "Because you can't tell tone from an email.
You really can't.
You can't.
You can't."
And I said, "So, I just." Do you really want me to do that to my kids? I mean, you really want me to? Is that really you want me to? You really want that to happen to my dog? They would, because some of the time it was just what they would say was just so crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I being older, I understand. They're fighting for their kid. I get that, and I 100% support that. I want more people to fight for their kids, but I want them to also listen to both sides.
And 99% of the time, they're dealing with they've only heard part of it.
Right.
The first one to mama with the news wins.
Yeah.
And if something happened in class and it was taken a particular way and you didn't realize that,
right,
so that you could be the one to warn mama that they may have had their feelings hurt. By the time the day's over and they get home to tell mama, it's told in a way that I'd write that email too.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm all about fighting for your kid for sure.
What's something that makes you proud to be a teacher?
I think some of my favorite things are when I see my kids that have grown up and they have kids of their own and they want to introduce me to their kids.
Have you had any of those kids yet?
Yeah.
Because that'll make you feel a different level of once you have that.
Oh yeah.
Those students.
I mean, I've had kids of kids. I have some now. But just when you see them and they're like, "Hey, this is Miss Ashby or Miss Evans," I can always date myself by my last name, and they're like, "This is my favorite teacher," and I just knowing that I made an impact, and that they remember me and they care enough. They want me to see pictures of their babies, or they want to tell me they got engaged, and I'm talking grown people. I mean, they're in their 30s. And that's one of the proudest things. And I love seeing my kids be successful, like owning their businesses or working. I like seeing them get awards and accolades and
seeing their dreams come true.
Oh yeah, I love seeing that. I love seeing that. And talking to them on Facebook. I'm friends with so many of them now on Facebook, and I just love hearing about, what's going on and just about their lives.
I think your quote here is perfect.
Oh my gosh, what did I put?
It's more about the life lessons and impact, and not so much about the grammar and literature.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I mean, it's all about life lessons, especially nowadays. I try to be a good role model. I really do.
For me, it's I can't remember one time when I've been asked for the quadratic formula. Not once. But the other things that I was able to convey in class that are useful.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you like to give to students that are currently in high school?
I would like to tell them that peace is more important than popularity. I'd like to tell them that finding the right person, whoever that is, you're going to build a life with somebody, and that's a long life. And when you marry them, you marry their whole family.
That's great advice for anybody.
So think about that.
And friends come and go like the wind.
And that's what I tell them a lot. I say friendship is seasonal, and that's okay. If you're lucky enough to have a friend throughout your whole life, then that's wonderful. But if sometimes friends are seasonal, and sometimes you got to be strong enough to let that go.
I have none from junior high, 2 from high school that I still stay, that are real friends.
Yeah.
And and I don't miss any of them.
Yeah.
I have lots of friends, just not that group of folks.
I'm friendly with a lot of people from high school, but my people that are my people are who I got when I started working. My little group.
What do you want your students to say about you as a teacher that you would consider the highest praise?
That I made an impact, that I mattered, that even on those hard days when I was really on them and we might have fussed or fought, that I did it with love, and I taught a lesson. And there have been times that I've been wrong, and I've had to say, I apologize in front of the class, because I think that's important. If you make a mistake in front of the class, it needs to be corrected in front of the class. But just that I helped them in some way that they could take with them later in life, some way, whether it be grammar or life lessons, I guess.
Well, I thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for
having me.
And
we'll be right back with story time. And we're back in story time. And so you had shared some stories, and I'll refer to the notes from time to time.
Okay.
If that's okay. So what's a memorable moment you had in your class, and how did that moment impact your teaching? And you mentioned you had several things there that are story time worthy.
Yes, I did. One of the things that I remember to this day was early on in my teaching, when I was very disciplinarian and a little hard-nosed myself, and I expected people to, just do everything the way they were supposed to. And I had a group of kids that I had for 4 years. I had them in 8th grade reading, 9th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. So like most of them liked me, thank goodness, but they had me forever. But I remember when they were in 9th grade, I had a student, and he struggled with his behavior. Okay. And it had been a bad day. And he just did not want to do his work. And I finally just said, hey, buddy, like, I need you to do your work. I need you to pick your pencil up, and I need you to do something. And he took his little pencil, and he went.
Snapped that pencil right in front
and just threw it in the ground. And one of my other kids on the front row looked at me, and he was like, he was about to laugh because he didn't know what I was going to do. And I'll be honest, that at that point I was mad. But looking back, I have learned that I can't let students raise my temperature, or my temperature would be raised all the time. So I'm not sure that I handled that one correctly back then, but thank goodness that my student on the front, he didn't laugh, because he would have probably heard about it later, because we're still friends to this day. But when we talk, he's like, I remember that time in ninth grade when, the pencil incident. And I'm like, we don't talk about that anymore. That was fun. That was fun now looking back on it. Let's see. I can't remember what else I put.
So you talked about some of the things strategies that you use, some of the things that you did to capture your kids' attention. So like alien dress up day.
Okay.
And there's a picture. I'll share that picture with folks as well.
We were really big into reading novels, and I would always try to do something at the end that was really fun, especially if it was not the most exciting story. We talked a little bit about War of the Worlds. We read War of the Worlds, and so we had like an alien party at the end. And so last night on Facebook, I had put out some questions and said, hey, if you ever had me for school, like give me some ideas so I don't forget it. And I got so many people in that class that said Alien Day, and they started sending all their pictures from Alien Day that they still have 20 years later. But we made homemade alien costumes, and we had this alien party. The paper came out. They took pictures of it. It was in the paper. And then we also had like food and all kind of stuff. And that was really fun. We had a contest. I think I gave out gift cards for the best. And always, no matter what, when I would dress up, I would always be like on empty and have to get out at the gas station, on the way to school or back in my costume. So I never planned that very well. So I would and they got used to me getting out looking like that.
Yeah, just headed into Publix.
Yes. No, I've done that quite a few times. I just have to not be embarrassed. One thing that we did, same kids, I think it's the same kids. Like I said, I had them so many times. When they were in 11th grade, we read Night by Elie Wiesel. Fabulous book. It's a memoir of him in the Holocaust. Have you read it?
I have not, but
my gosh, it is amazing. It's terrible, sad. It's just one of those heart-wrenching books. Miss Ward reads it with her 10th grade now. And Oprah had a contest to try to meet him. He was going to be on, and I was like, hey guys, they're always used to me, coming up with something. I was like, let's get on Oprah. And they're like, what are you talking about? So I was like, we got to do this. And so we did this really big project, and we wrote him all letters. Like all my kids wrote him letters, and I sent them all off, and we never heard anything back. And I was so tore up, and I was like, I just felt so sad. And then the next year we got a letter from him, and he wrote it and signed it. And I have it to this day somewhere. I don't know where it is in the move, but I remember just thinking, that's amazing, because he's since passed away. But I just remember him saying, thank you. This is an important issue, and just signing it. It just meant a lot to us. I thought that was pretty neat.
So have you ever had a kid to pass out after blood drive?
Yes, I have. So this is a funny story too. Blood drive. First of all, everybody passes out. It's like a game. Who's going to pass out first? But I had a student who had given blood, and this is when Miss Henson's son was in my class. So it was Gammon, Morgan, and Parker Henson, and that group of students. And so I had a little girl that was feeling sick, and I know we're not supposed to send anybody to the nurse without a helper. Okay. Right. So I was like, I'm going to walk her right across here. And so we walk out, and she's like, I don't really feel well. And then she just starts to fall back, and I am behind her, and I just kind of slide up under her, and I'm literally on the ground, and she's laying on me, and I just yell out, Parker, Gammon. And all of a sudden, both their heads poke out the door, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm underneath a person. I need some help. And so they run out and they help her. And I'm like, can y'all please help her get to the to the nurse's office. And then I can't remember who was coming up the hall, but it was a teacher coming up the hall, and he was like, "That was the most graceful slide I've ever seen."
Safe.
So apparently I didn't hurt either of us, and it was a pretty soft landing. So
From time to time, as a teacher, you get to travel. So it's my understanding you had some pretty interesting a travel trip or two that was
I have.
pretty exciting.
I have. Probably one of my favorite stories, actually. We are very lucky here. Coach Harris gives us opportunities to travel in the summer if we want to go to conferences, and we love going to high schools at work. I've probably been 4 or 5 times, and so we were going to Baltimore. And I'd never been to Baltimore, but my favorite author, Poe, is from Baltimore. He's buried in Baltimore. His house is in Baltimore.
So it just so happens you could kill 2 birds with one stone.
Yeah, of course I was going. I don't know what else was in Baltimore. I don't even know what was said at the conference. Sorry. But so we get to Baltimore, we do our conferences, and Coach Harris tells us, do not go anywhere by yourselves. Okay. This might not be safe in some places. And he said, make sure that you let me know where you're going to be. Well, we decided we were going to leave. And we did not tell him. So it was me, Miss Brown, and Miss Holiday. And so we decided we're going to walk to the church. So we start walking, and we're walking down the street, and there's what would they call him? A Baltimorean? Does that sound good?
Yeah, whatever.
A guy from Baltimore.
Yeah.
He's coming toward us, and he says, cross the street. And we're just kind of walking. And we're like, is he talking to us? And he gets closer, and he says, cross the street. And so we're just walking, and he says, cross the street. And so we're like, okay. And like, we go across the street. Well, there's some kind of fight, drug deal, cop, something happening over here. And he just saw 3 random women who obviously didn't know what they were doing, walking up, the street. So that was the first thing that happened. And then we got to the church, and we found his grave, and we took pictures, of course. And then it started raining. And then, there's nobody around. It's starting to rain. We don't have anything. And this old door opens up, and this man pokes his head out and says, hey, girls, y'all want to come in here? And we go, I mean, it is a pretty church, and there's 3 of us and 1 of him. So we go in the church, and there's like this really beautiful organ, like Phantom of the Opera organ. And like they're playing it, and we're just like, oh my gosh, this is like the most amazing thing ever. And then he says, y'all want to go under the church? And we're like, might as well. So there's a burial site under the church. So we literally went under the church, saw all these graves, and then he says, they got one more thing. And we were like, what is happening? We were so excited. I don't know if this is true or not, okay, because I'm not a history person, but Miss Holiday is a history person. He said, I can show you a tunnel that was used in the Underground Railroad. And he opens it up, and there's a tunnel down there. But we did not go into that tunnel because it had a lid. And I was like, what if he locks us in? And it was just a ploy. So then we decided after that we were going to Uber to the house, and our Uber driver, his name was Jesus. So we said it was Jesus because we needed to be protected the rest of the time. So Baltimore was a lot of fun. Probably won't go back though, because my wallet was stolen in the hotel room.
Picked up by Jesus at the church. There's nothing quite like it.
That was the best thing.
Did you ever teach any undercover cops?
I did. To
me, that's the best story.
It's the craziest story. So, in my student teaching, when I was 24 and was teaching all alone because my supervising teacher was taking care of her husband for good reason. One day I had a student walk in, a new student, and I recognized him. And they were like, this is so-and-so. And I was like, okay. So going about my business, I get called to the office, and they say, do you know who this person is? And I said, I do. And apparently they were doing some kind of little sting operation. So I was sworn to secrecy by law. I had all these things presented before me. I mean, I was young, and It was the craziest thing ever, and it was the most uncomfortable situation ever, but I had to grade his papers, knowing who he was, and just it was the most difficult, unnatural, unnerving.
Was he a B student?
Well, I don't know that I graded much. I don't think he turned in very much, just to be honest. But it was it's been an adventure, let me just say that.
So granny dancing is the bullet point. What's
Granny dancing? Yeah. Well, at West Morgan, we love to dance, and we love to get skits together and do West Morgan's Got Talent, like for teachers got talents. But there's a group of us that like to dress up like old people, guys and girls, and we like to do dances in front of the school. So that's always been fun. I have video of that too.
that is awesome.
It's on our Facebook page.
What's a funny story that you can tell from your high school days?
I was perfect.
Well, according to the notes.
Well, I went to a school. I graduated with 42 people. Speak High School. It's not around anymore. And I was a good kid. I mean, I did stuff sometimes, but my mom was a teacher, so I couldn't do a whole lot. But one time I remember there were a group of us that went to the board for something, and we agreed at the board that we were not going back to school until a certain time because we got out early. So technically, I guess I was skipping school. And so when we came back from Moulton, we actually stayed at a friend's house for like an hour, and we passed the other group. They thought we were going back to school. So they went back to school for a whole hour before we showed up. And when we got there, our teacher was very upset with us. It wasn't personal. It wasn't, but we just wanted to not have to go back to school. And so the vice principal dealt with us. It was Harvey Boland.
Oh, he worked for him.
Yeah, I did work for him again. So he got us in his office, and he's like, "Y'all aren't supposed to be going and skipping school like that." He's like, "Y'all are gonna have to be punished." So he doled out our punishment, and then years later, he becomes my vice principal, and I'm working for him.
Yeah. So, did you ever get a paddling?
Undeserved.
Well,
I actually got two. One of them was undeserved, but one of them I got a paddling when I was in kindergarten for talking too much. And my mom had a rule. If I got a paddling at school, I got in trouble at home.
That's absolutely a good rule.
I did not tell her. And eventually I told her when I was in like junior high that I got a paddling. So I think the statute of limitations had passed. So she was like, "I can't believe I didn't hear about that." I said, "Me either." So I didn't get punished, 7 years later. So,
but if you know a teacher like Miss Ashby that would make a great interview for Teacher Tales, please feel free to comment, hit me up on Facebook, or drop me an email, and I will get in touch with them and do my very best to schedule an interview. Thanks for being with us. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teacher Tales. If you were inspired, motivated, or just had a good laugh, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. And if you know a good teacher who has a story to tell, I'd love to hear from them. Send me an email at motivatedinspiration@gmail.com with your suggestion. Remember, whether you're in the classroom, at home, or out in the world, keep spreading the joy of learning. Until next time, keep those stories alive.